Let's talk about China, and I want this to be a discussion, so make sure you comment down below, because I know a lot of you know a lot more about this than I do, but I think I know enough to at least have an opinion. And my opinion is that I really don't like China. And I'm not talking about the Chinese people here, I'm cool with them. I'm talking about the CCP in particular. And the CCP is the Communist Party of China, so China's government. Now, you've probably been hearing a lot about China in the news lately with the NBA and all that's going on. So this is my attempt to pile on, to just add fuel to the fire. Because you guys probably know that I'm not about cancel culture. I think it's really stupid. But in this case, for once, well, maybe not for once, maybe for a few times, cancel culture can actually work in our favor, because China actually deserves to be canceled for all the bullshit that they do. And again, it's the CCP, not the Chinese people. So I don't want this anti-China sentiment to die down, because this is actually really important. Those guys need to be put in check. So in this video, let's go over some reasons why China is so bad. And the reasons I'm going to go over, well, this is just a short list. China does many more terrible things than what I'm about to talk about right here. And whatever you think is the worst thing that a country and a government can do, China surpasses that. So just keep that in mind when I'm going through these things, because I'm probably not doing justice to how bad they actually are. And one guy I do appreciate for going so hard against China is Kyle Bass, the famous hedge fund manager. His Twitter is basically all anti-China stuff now, because he supports Hong Kong, which we'll talk about in a second. But if you want to learn more about this whole thing, he's a good guy to follow on Twitter. So the first thing we got to talk about is that China is not a democracy, even though they say they are. They're not. It's more like a dictatorship. And that's becoming very apparent, if it wasn't already, in these Hong Kong protests. So Hong Kong is in this weird one country, two systems system, where they're kind of a part of China, but really they're autonomous and they don't want to be a part of China. So the protests are basically Hong Kong fighting for democracy and freedom from China. And it all started because China wanted to put in a law where they could extradite anyone they wanted from Hong Kong and the surrounding areas, which again doesn't work for Hong Kong because they're supposed to be autonomous. So something that you got to understand about China and the CCP is that Xi Jinping, this guy Xi Jinping, he's the leader of the CCP. And what he's done in the last few years is completely consolidate his power to the point where he's made it that he will be the emperor of China forever now. And of course, they don't actually call him the emperor, but that's basically what it is. And if you guys remember the China series that I did, I talked about this, how all that political corruption cleanup, that was all just cover for Xi Jinping to get rid of his rivals. Of course, there were corrupt politicians, but it was mainly like get rid of the opposition, make them disappear, which is a common thing in China. You could disappear at any moment. If the government doesn't like you, that's what happens. Okay, so Xi Jinping is the emperor now, and the way the CCP manages the country is by having complete control over its people. So that means a lot of different things, including information restriction. So in China, you can't jump on Twitter, you can't jump on YouTube. Everything on the internet goes through a CCP filter. You're only allowed to see what they want you to see. So everything becomes CCP propaganda. And that's why I feel bad for the Chinese people, because they're victims of this. So there are tons of Chinese people that absolutely love China because they know nothing else, because they've been brainwashed. And then when there's information restriction, then of course there's going to be no freedom of speech. If you speak out against the CCP, you disappear. China just has a tight grip on everyone. But this complete control that they have, it's a delicate balance. It's not easy to do and maintain. China might want the world to think that everything is stable, but it's not. So for example, the people in the coastal cities are somewhat happy because, they have most of the money. That's where most of the wealth went to in this huge expansion that happened in China over the last 20 years. But just people 20 miles from the coast, more inland, they're not happy at all because they're very poor. So all these people inland, there's a lot of them, and it's harder for the CCP to keep them happy and quiet. And one of the things the CCP's control is predicated on is the continuous growth of China. So it is not good when their GDP keeps getting revised lower, because all they need is just a little spark to piss the people off, and then you get the Hong Kong situation. Look at this, it's just chaos. This is like the worst thing that China could think of. They absolutely despise this, because this is just a slap in the face of their total control that they try to exert. And it really screws up that delicate balance I'm talking about. So keep this in mind for later, like the balance is delicate. It's not easy to do what they're doing. So along with this complete control of the people, of course, there are going to be massive human rights violations. And one of the biggest examples of that are what the Chinese government is doing to the Uyghurs. And the Uyghurs are basically Chinese Muslims. They're a minority group. And what the CCP did is round them all up and put them in re-education camps. Here's a picture of one of those camps right here. Yeah, they're really getting educated, right? No, because what it is a concentration camp. And of course, they abuse them too. Like I said, a concentration camp. It's horrible just because they're Muslim. And one of the recent stories to come out, which is absolutely horrendous, is that they're actually harvesting organs from these people because they're in these camps and they have all their biometric data. So the story is that they harvest these organs from the Uyghurs and they sell them off to the Saudis because the Saudis can use those as transplants because they're Muslim. It's like halal organs. It's disgusting. They have concentration camps full of people that they harvest. And this is real. I have friends with family members in those camps. And I'm just scratching the surface of what they do to the Uyghurs. So if you want to learn more about it, definitely check it out. It will make you disgusted. Now, some might see all of this stuff that China is doing and say, who cares? You know, it's an internal China problem. Now, first of all, I don't agree with that at all, especially when you think about what they're doing to people. You should care because they're absolutely terrible. But also, it doesn't just affect China, it affects the rest of the world, including the US, because of how they do business. So something you got to realize is that every Chinese company, even if they don't say so, it is owned and run by the CCP. Anything the CCP wants, that company will do. So Alibaba, one of the most popular companies for us traders, yeah, it's owned by the Chinese government. Why do you think Jack Ma had to step down and become like the Minister of Education? He did something wrong. He pissed them off, but he was lucky enough to not disappear. I think he was too high profile for them to make him disappear. So you got to realize that in everything, including business, the CCP is out to get everyone, including the US. They would love to rule this world with a red fist. You can't reason with them, you can't trust them, and that's been proven again and again, as I'll show you. But even so, we still do business with them for some reason. So one of the biggest things that China does is steal everyone's intellectual property. So like this headline says, 1 in 5 US companies say China has stolen their IP. The US Trade Representative has estimated the annual loss to China at between 225 billion and 600 billion. That's every year. They have a whole army of hackers constantly hacking into everything, stealing everything. I don't know if you guys are watching this final season of Mr. Robot, which is a great show, but you know the Dark Army? That's not too far from the truth. And White Rose being the Chinese politician, well, guess what? He's a part of the CCP. They are that dangerous. Recently, I learned about how they stole the F-35 fighter jet plans from the US, which cost us over $1 trillion to make that fighter jet. And they already have a copycat. You can imagine the national security issues with them doing all this bullshit. And then on top of all that hacking, they're buying up all these companies around the world too. Just check out some of the companies they own in the US. They own 100% of Smithfield Foods. So they have access to our food supply. They have pretty big stakes in the finance sector, like Blackstone, Visa is small, but Morgan Stanley, International Lease Finance Corp own 80% of that. Then of course they want control over the energy too, so they're invested in all of these, like Chesapeake Energy. They try to buy energy companies in various countries so they can control their power grid. They even try to buy defense companies, which the whole Biden thing going on, part of the criticism is about that, because I don't know the full story and I don't know what's fake news or not, but Biden's son was in a PE firm that got acquired by a big Chinese company. Then when the Chinese wanted to acquire a more defense-related company in the US while Biden was vice president, the people in our government were trying to block it because of security concern, but then Biden, because of that deal with his son, he said, no, let it go. So they're able to acquire the company. Now, again, I don't know how true that whole thing is. You could comment down below if you know, but you see the huge security concerns here. And it's not just our energy, our finances, and our security. It's even our culture that they're trying to infiltrate. So you know the app TikTok, which is like the #1 app for Gen Z, has over 1 billion downloads worldwide and it has more users than Twitter and Facebook and everything. That is completely owned by the Chinese. And teenagers are on it all the time. So you don't think the Chinese could go in and start influencing them whichever way they want? It's dangerous. And I don't know if I sound like I'm spouting out conspiracy theories right now, but this is serious. Like they are that conniving, like what you see in movies or read in those spy books. That's China. They are out to get you. So even though this is all proven, like how dangerous it is to work with China. Like if you go over there on a business trip and you use their Wi-Fi, yeah, your data is going to get stolen. And that's their Wi-Fi like anywhere, in any hotel, because they control everything. And the reason they do business with them, even with the human rights violations and all this stuff, is because the Chinese market is so big and there's so much money there. And people are just fine throwing out their morals when it comes to money. So this whole NBA thing, that's a prime example of this. Daryl Morey, who's the GM for the Rockets, he sent out a tweet supporting Hong Kong. And basically the NBA made him take it down. Then they were apologizing to China, like, oh, we're so sorry. China got pissed, stopped showing their games. And eventually the NBA backtracked a little. They said, okay, you know, our people can say what they want, because they saw the backlash that they got for censoring Morey. But still, right now, they're kicking fans out of games for holding up Hong Kong signs. And then LeBron just came out yesterday against Morey for supporting Hong Kong. them. And these guys just look like idiots. Like, that was the stupidest thing that LeBron has done in his career. He's been great up until this point. I really like him, but no, that was ridiculous. Because all these players and the NBA have billions in dollars worth of deals with China. And if you make China a little bit mad, they're going to come back against you. And all that money is down the drain, including all the endorsements for LeBron and everybody. Apple is another company doing the same thing. There was an Apple app that the Hong Kong protesters were using to track police movement in Hong Kong because they're fighting them, right? Apple took that app out of the App Store. Why? Because they have so much business in China again, and they don't want to make China mad. Disney is another company that has billions and billions invested in China, so they don't do anything to piss off China either. Which is why, if you didn't see this South Park episode that came out recently, it's called Banned in China. It was amazing, and they did end up getting banned in China for it. But one of the stories in that episode was Disney and how entrenched they are with China and how they have to suck up to them. And I love when they do Disney stuff because this Mickey Mouse is just a nutcase. Look at his shirt. I love Xi Jinping. Definitely watch that episode because no one does satire better than South Park. And here's an article about all the companies that censor their stuff just to appease China. American Airlines. They had to change the descriptions listing Taiwan as a country because that pisses off China. They don't recognize Taiwan as a country. Coach referenced Hong Kong and Taiwan as individual countries on a shirt, then called the design a serious inaccuracy. Disney again, they own ESPN. They sent out a memo to all the ESPN employees prohibiting reference to Chinese politics when talking about this whole NBA thing. Gap, they sold a shirt that featured an incorrect map of China but not featuring Taiwan or South Tibet. They had to apologize and remove the shirt. So many companies are in a sense in China's pocket, and it's ridiculous. I understand there's huge profits to be made in China, but there's got to be a line somewhere with values, right? And okay, maybe these companies don't have values. Then what about your own self-preservation? The CCP in China is going to come back to bite you in the ass, if not now, later. So say what you will about Trump, but at least he is taking a hard stance against China, and he's giving them a hard time, and I'm sure that they hate it. And like I said, there is a very delicate balance in China. China relies on the outside world a lot because they're still an export-based company, right? Versus some place like the US where we're pretty self-sufficient. So yeah, when we screw with China's economics because we're such a global connected economy now, it screws up the global supply chain. Things get really disrupted, but you know, at a certain point, is it worth it with how evil China really is? That's what I'd like to hear your opinion on down in the comments. And also what you think about canceling all these companies working with China. I know it probably can't happen, but I still love seeing them get shit. It's good to make them think twice about working with China. At the very least, we should have our government be putting restrictions on China buying any companies in the US. We shouldn't have them anywhere here. Anyways, I'm trying to do my part to spread the word because I don't think we should let China go on with all the bullshit that they do. But let me know what you think down below. And I know this video didn't have much to do with trading, but at the very least, I got this systems trading checklist for you, which is nice when you're trading a system because I don't have to try and analyze what will happen if sentiment turns against China, and then what will happen to all these companies if they have to pull out, because I get to just follow my system. And this is the checklist that our team uses to follow our system. So definitely check it out. It's all free. Just put in your email and your name down here and I'll send it to you. And this is updated. So if you got it before, check it out again because it's different. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you get email notifications whenever our new videos come out. We're publishing a lot more again. So subscribe and I'll see you in the next video. Stay fallible out there. Bye.